we've been sold to, that things can happen overnight or in a couple of months, and that's just not the reality.
You know what's really great is tracking, and your performance is insanely better.
All of these diets and all of the things that we've seen marketed to us, they all work for a certain amount of time until they don't.
I think that when people hear nutrition, that the number one thing they think of is body composition.
After you do this for a while and start to correlate your macros with how you're feeling and when you're making better food choices, that's what keeps you in the game longer. Welcome to the Lift Heavy Swing Fast podcast.
Welcome everybody to our show today. Our
Snowed in edition.
Oh yeah.
We're going to be cranking them out this week because we can podcast while we're inside as long as we have electricity. Oh no, wait, we are on batteries.
Oh yeah,
we can go all the light might be off in the back, but we can keep this bitch going.
We'll be podcasting in the dark, which if you're listening on Spotify, doesn't matter to you.
This won't come out for a couple of weeks, but people are probably all across the country getting this storm that we're getting right now. Like, we're peak February. It is February 18th. We're in Oklahoma. It is going to be 0 degrees, minus this week. And we're getting like a bunch of 6 to 8 inches of snow or something.
And we just came from Montana and Yellowstone, where we were riding snowmobiles. And now we should have brought the snowmobile to Oklahoma.
We brought Montana back, which is I'm actually, in one part of me is like, would have obviously loved to miss this. But I actually feel like we acclimated to it in Montana, like living in the snow, whatever. Mm-hmm. And now that we're just home and can work and relax, it's kind of nice.
We went from a lot of snow to, I think it's going to be like 8 inches of snow, but we came from feet of snow.
Feet of snow. Guys, if you haven't done a snowmobile trip in your lifetime, add it to the bucket list because it's a lot of fun.
It was a ton of fun. I mean, we got a private tour of Yellowstone National Park. It was insane. We got to see wolves eating a bison.
Yes. So I went 6 years ago with my dad and my brother and a couple of his friends, and we had a great time, like a really great time. But like this time was better. Yeah.
Because I was there.
I mean, it was just like I feel like we did more. I don't know. It was just better. We had more snow. You know, the weather's a little bit better for snowmobiling in February when there's like a lot more snow. It's really important to be able to go snowmobiling.
That's an important part of snowmobiling. Actually, but you can go across the street if you want to with it, but it kind of doesn't seem right.
No, but also like just the views are like insane when it's just covered. Everything is covered in snow. It's very wild. It's like honestly unreal.
Yeah, it's like a whole other planet out there.
But yeah, so Cody and I are also just genuinely recovering from that because we are physically fit human beings. I would like to consider myself, but also like, what the fuck? Because if you're on a snowmobile for 8 hours a day and it's pretty much nonstop, honestly, we stop for to go to the bathroom and to eat for like 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. You were just like nonstop clenching and holding and going on a lot of bumpy rides because it was kind of like crowded for the President's Day weekend. I'm not going to lie. Like by the end of day 2, honestly, I was like really sore.
Well, day 2, we had a really rough finish. They groom the trails in the morning, like 3 o'clock in the morning. And then after a full day of hundreds, I don't know, maybe thousands of people riding their snowmobiles on them, they get pretty rough. Yeah. And
they start to create like these weird moguls just exist.
You go up and down and and it's hard. And I mean, our final ride back into town for 40 miles was pretty rough.
A couple hours of just some hellacious bullshit. So yeah, I mean, it was just a testament to like my dad's gonna be 60 this year. Like, I mean, he kept up with us just as much as we. I think
he was tougher. He was even tougher. He was fine with it. But we would pull up. You're like, oh, that sucked.
Yes.
And it did suck at the end. But I mean, it's still fun. But I just had to, you kind of just laugh at it. You're like, well, this is it. Like, there's no other way of getting around this. Like,
anybody that's been on an adventure like that kind of knows. Like, look, like whether you've done an overnight running relay or you've gone out four-wheeling, on your ATVs. Like, it's not about like ever. You're not going out like expecting it to be. It's not a smooth ride. There's always, you're gonna get lost. Like there's just always adventure involved in it.
Stuck.
Yeah, you get stuck. You're gonna get lost. You're gonna like hit shit. You might wreck. Like these are just part of the like. If you're gonna go on a trip like that, that's to be expected. And if you're not expecting that, expect that.
Yeah, I mean, once you're out there, there is no like abort mission. There's no car to come pick you up. Like you got to go back in the
Yeah.
same way you came out. So
Totally.
and it just is what it is. And I think that's part of it. You just kind of accept it. And I think, you know, you can kind of just learn a lot about that from other things you do in your life. It's like, hey, this is what it's going to be, and this is how I have to do it. It's not always easy, but
yes.
here we go.
I'm sure, I guess I'm not a big skier, but like snowboarding, skiing is kind of the same thing. Like if you're on the top of a hill, like what are you supposed to do? Like when you're 10% of the way down, you kind of have to commit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could. I mean, I have seen people ride the lift back down.
Yeah.
But it's rare.
Yeah, it's rare. You just.
But I do feel like you get down the mountain a lot faster than, you know, we were out like 50 miles away.
Yeah.
So
no,
like,
I know. You're 4 hours out, and you're like, fuck, I have a whole nother afternoon now to go back.
Yeah.
But it's also really rewarding because I was like so hungry at night too after we came back in, because we also like weren't eating like big meals when we were out. So it was like we snacked, we ate lunch, whatever. But then coming back and like eating, it was really rewarding at night.
Yeah. I may never eat an Uncrustable again. I think I dominated some Uncrustables. I mean, they were so convenient, and they're packed with calories, so like they get you the energy you need, but it's not really my thing.
Okay, but
you know, they are
6 days ago,
delicious.
you and Walmart was your thing.
Oh yeah. I mean, even yesterday that was still my thing because I had a couple left over and I was hungry at the airport. So I mean, but I don't want to eat them anymore now that I'm home.
Those are not it. Yeah, I don't know. I used to eat a lot of peanut butter and jelly, but that stuff now I'm like, I just don't want it.
Dude, some people love those things. I mean, on the golf course, you see people eat those all the time.
Yeah.
Which, again, like, and this is a nice like in our lead into our topic today. It's just this. I need the protein.
Yes, exactly right. I look at. I mean, they're dessert. I look at that like an ice cream cone. Like I obviously like enjoy it. It's sweet. It's really delicious. But like, it's not gonna do me any favors. Like if I'm hungry and like need to eat.
Yeah.
Like yesterday, you offered it to me at the airport. I was starving, and I was like, I literally like don't even want that. I just, and I use like, again, like 10 years ago, that would have been like my bread and butter. I'd have been like, yeah, that's like my body fuels on that. I've just adapted to like, I need protein. Like I need to eat protein, and there's not a lot of protein in those. There's just not.
I mean, they're, you know, hyper palatable, right? Because like the texture is great. They just go right down. I mean, how many bites does it take? It may take you like 6 bites to eat that whole thing.
If you're like pacing yourself.
If you're pacing yourself.
Small. They're tiny.
Yeah, and they're packed. They're 200 something calories. I mean, but when you're in a pinch and you need something that travels well, it got the job done.
Yeah, no, we did the best that we could. We did lunch meat sandwiches. That was like our best that we could for everybody. We made sandwiches every day, which was good. I mean, they were good. It was solid. And
it's just, and this is definitely going to be something that leads into our topic today, but you've really got to make an effort to get adequate protein.
Yeah.
Even when you're traveling, I mean, when I went to Florida, I did an Instacart to get some Kevin's like food that I could cook on my little stovetop that I had in my hotel room and a microwave. Just because even if you're trying to pick the highest protein option on the menu, it might cost you a fortune because it's going to be a steak. And then next thing you know, it's a $75, $80 steak.
And it's covered in sauce sometimes too.
Yeah.
So like you just kind of have to know that, and you have to either be willing to ask for the modifications or like be willing to like adjust your macros as such. Mm-hmm. I think like knowing, I mean, when you're on a vacation too, it's like you kind of just do the best that you can.
Right.
And that's what typically we try to do. I mean, 5 days isn't going to like make or break you. I promise if anybody's listening to this, which we are going to talk about nutrition today, it's not the 5 days that you fucked up on your vacation or over the holidays. You know, I think that's a big thing. People forget that when you gain fat and gain weight, it's very slow over time. Mm-hmm. We expect the results to happen somehow like a fraction of that for some reason. But yeah, I mean, you got to just kind of learn to make the best decisions that you can. But we definitely had to be smart as best as we could with nutrition, because we really were like fueling our bodies for like these long days. Like that was another part of it too, where I was like, well, I want to sleep good tonight, like because I need to sleep, because I need to recover, because these days are really long and I like don't want to feel like shit. And I think we did a pretty good job actually. Yeah. Honestly. Yeah.
I mean, it's just we went to the grocery store before we got to our hotel, and you just try everything you can. I mean, neither one of us are like hardcore about like having to stay on our diet on our plan for traveling, but I just feel better when I eat protein.
Yes,
and if
same.
You know, and I don't know if I would have added it up. I mean, I usually eat 200 grams of protein a day. I probably would have, I don't know, probably had half that.
Oh yeah, I definitely had less than that. Yeah, you probably did a decent at like maybe close to 100 grams. So like we weren't bringing, like we didn't do our supplements. Like we had no protein powders. Like sometimes like that's like good in a pinch. But again, like we had a limited hotel room. We didn't even have like a kitchenette this week. You know, we kept our packing to like focusing on our snow gear. Like it's just a matter, you kind of have to like pick your battles. And again, when you are on a snowmobile all day, it's like, fuck, like I'm not going to break out my protein shake. Like when I have a limited amount of space, we had one like area where we could put all of our food,
between the four of us.
So again, like you just kind of had to, but we did a good job of like picking protein at night. At breakfast, I think, again, is where people tend to fuck up. And that was hard for us because we thought we were going to have more options at our hotel breakfast. And we just like really didn't like that. That was lame.
Yeah. I mean, I even went to McDonald's one morning, which I got eggs, and they had a steak that was actually pretty good for breakfast.
Yeah, Cody ate a McDonald's steak for protein, guys. Like maybe that, who knows, that might be protein adjacent.
I had eggs and steak at McDonald's for breakfast one morning. So.
But anyway, well, today's topic is nutrition. We haven't done like a nutrition in season 2. I don't think we've done a nutrition only podcast.
No,
I know we did some in the Q&A, but
yeah, that's what I was going to say. We've touched on some nutrition, but today we're going to talk all about nutrition, mainly because of a question we had in our programming about how to, eat to perform, essentially.
Yeah, so let's give a little background because like maybe this is someone's first time listening. Shocker. I was a nutrition coach. Well, I wouldn't say was. I still currently am nutrition coaching. I did it full time for 5+ years. Been in the fitness industry for like 20 years now. I feel like that's starting to sound ridiculous, but it's true. We're old.
Speak for yourself.
And was a competitive like endurance athlete for a long time too. So like just for that context, as far as like I've done all the things, everything that I say, I speak from experience truly. You and I have both experimented with all of the diets and all of the things, the macros, the ketos, the fasting. And so as intense and passionate as I can come across about some of these topics, it's coming from a place of like, I've been there, I've done that, I fucked it up. I've also coached literally hundreds of people, maybe thousands at this point. It's coming from a place of like, this is what works for the vast majority of people. This is the path of least resistance. This is going to get you to where you need to go. There's nuance, of course, in all of this, and we'll touch on some of that stuff too. But like, there is so much bullshit out there that like all our goal is when we're talking about this kind of stuff, I think in any topic that we're discussing is like to try and simplify it for people truly and like bring them success. So I just wanted to kind of add that little like context before we dive into the question. And of course, Cody, again, like you haven't done much nutrition coaching, but you've been working with clients one-on-one for longer than I have. And so you also can vouch for how important nutrition is in terms of people's like success rates when you're working with them in the gym.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't have all the education and certifications that you do or experience working with people on their nutrition. I've done what you would call macro coaching. I've like coached people on how to track their macros and then hold them accountable, which was really successful when I did it with people. I don't do that anymore. Yeah, that's my extent of
it's like, I mean, a good trainer, and I like we see that in some. I know that like some of the Equinox trainers that we worked with like several years ago, they were like that was starting to be a part of like the curriculum. So I'm assuming like some of the big box gyms are like doing a little bit better than what they did like 15-20 years ago, which was like in the ACE book, and it was just kind of some very scientific like how many carbs you need after you've do an endurance run, and like now we're like doing more macro based coaching. Precision Nutrition's out there like putting out a lot of really good content, like that kind of stuff. So anyway, we had a really good question come in from, so this isn't a Q&A episode, but this is based off of a really good question a client has asked. We've been working with this client's been working with us for 2 years since we started Lift Everything Fast.
Yeah, she's an OG.
She's an OG. And so it's a great question, and she asked it, like she gave us lots of really great things that I want to kind of unpack like a piece at a time, but I'll ask like the full question, then we'll kind of go all in. So she said, building off of episode 55 of the podcast, if you haven't listened to that, definitely go back and listen. I will link it in the show notes. We'd like to know some more in-depth discussion on how to pair the Lift Heavy Swing Fast program up with the Eat to Perform info. So Eat to Perform is our ebook. It's $29 on our website. Look at it, get it. It's good.
Good plug.
If I do say so myself.
Written by who?
Written by me. I'm telling you, like it's got like basically everything that you need to know. But apparently, like we need to expand on some stuff because of this question. So, how do we properly fuel for our workouts while in a fat loss, maintenance, bulking phase? I think I've heard you guys say you probably aren't burning as many calories as your Tamagotchi watch says you are. It's funny. Yeah, your watches are bullshit. We'll talk about that. How do you figure out and adjust for each phase? What are reasonable expectations of each? I love the gym part, but struggle with the discipline and nutrition to really maximize my gains and support my goals.
That last part is probably like 99% of people.
That's why I wanted to read the question, because I want the people to hear like this is a human being asking this question, and this is literally, I agree, like 99% of people. Didn't I say that to you when you said this question? I was like, this is everyone that I've coached. Like this is everybody.
It brings me back to watching all the videos of the strongmen back in the day that I used to be obsessed with, and they would talk about like the eating was like the job.
Yes.
And then they going to the gym for 2 hours a day because like they were strongmen. That's like what their job was. They were like, this is the fun part of the day.
Well, gym people like the gym.
Yeah.
Like most people, I mean, again, like the people that are like sticking with our programs that are regulars, like the working out part is like the fun part for them. It's same with people like in the industry even, you know, like we like to go do it. We like to train. It makes us feel better, like yada, yada, yada. We talked about this literally 1 or 2 episodes on our Q&A episode, last episode. However, 1 to 2 hours, not 1 to 2 hours, 3 to 4 to 5 hours a week in the gym, which is still excellent time in the gym, is a lot different than the other 23 hours of your day when you're up against 3 to 4 meals every day in and day out, and weekends and all the things. So it's like, that's where it can get more challenging because it's like, well, sure, you can bang out a 15-minute, 20-minute, hour-long workout, but making these food decisions throughout your whole day, at your job, life happens, that's where like the shit hits the fan. Truly.
Big time.
So she's asking about all of the phases. So when I say all the phases, okay, so eat to perform is basically broken up. I kind of unpack, you know, proteins, fats, carbs, give some high level, you know, tidbits on macros in general and how they work and just nutrition tips, all of the things. But then like the meat of our Eat to Perform book goes into, well, what's your goal? Basically, like you can put them into like 3 buckets of where people are at, right? So a client comes to us, they either want fat loss, they are looking to build muscle, and then there's maintenance. And I pause there because like most clients don't come to you ever saying, I want maintenance. Like nobody says that.
I want to teach me how to stay the same.
Yeah. So I had to like backtrack how I was explaining that. But I mean, there are the 3 buckets, and it's ironic because maintenance is the most important one. It's the one nobody does. And it's the one we should be spending 95% of our time in. 90-ish% of our gear should be in maintenance. So that's basically kind of what the 3 sections are in the book. Fat loss, self-explanatory. We're looking to lose body fat. Potentially weight loss is kind of coupled into that. They are not the same thing. We'll talk about that. Bulking, muscle building. What are other terms for it? What do people say? Massing, gaining, gain phase. Have you heard massing? Oh. That's an old school one. That's where in a calorie surplus looking to get bigger, right? That's your typical gym bro. It's typically guys that want this. And then maintenance is truly what it sounds like. Maintenance is maintaining your body weight. And I'll again unpack why someone would want to do that and why that's important. But basically how I like to if I take on a new client, I'll kind of go through it in terms of, you know, answering her question as to, well, how do you decide like which one to do? And like, how do you decide what your macros are? The ebook definitely helps you and is all you need to understand like where to gauge your macros. But this is the most important thing when it comes to like learning your macros and doing macros, because people get so hung up on, well, what are my fat loss macros? What are they? The best way to find out what your macros are is to understand what your maintenance calories are. And that's why I emphasize maintenance calories so much, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done before you're ready for either fat loss or muscle gain. If you can't just maintain and like learn the basics of tracking your food and being consistent with that and understanding proteins, carbs, and fats and what your foods are made up of, you're not ready to like graduate to the next thing. However, like we've been taught and marketed to that like we can do the next thing. And I always like the analogy of like, if you are putting a destination in your GPS, you also need a starting point always. Like Google does not let you, like it's a really smart computer machine thing. Now it's run by AI. It doesn't let you just put in, you have to give it a starting point. And I say that to my clients when I'm onboarding them, like, no matter where you are at, I don't care if you've actually tracked macros before, because a lot of people will say that they have. Sure. We need to know where you're at in the here and now and your maintenance calories and what those are, so that we know what are you eating right now? So how do we know where to go from here?
Well, it's like when just over the weekend, we're out snowmobiling, when we stop to look at a map, what do you got to do first?
Yes.
You don't look at destinations first. Right. You look, okay, where are we?
Yeah. Yes.
You are here. Like if you're at the mall and it's like a big star.
Yes.
You are here. Okay, cool. There I am.
Yes.
Now I need to go there.
Yes.
But you got to figure that out first.
So let's give a real life example of why, of like, because people are going to be out here thinking like, okay, well, sure, like in theory, okay, well, you went on this macro diet, you plugged in a calculator, it told you your fat loss macros were 1,700 calories, you tracked that for a week, nothing happened. Maybe a week isn't a long enough time, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but you did that for 2 weeks, nothing happened. If nothing is happening and you're at 1,700 calories, those might not be your fat loss macros. This is why like we need to understand where we're starting from and where we're going to go from there in the next step that we need to take. Maintenance calories are awesome because a lot of things can happen in maintenance that we tend to take for granted as well. So there's calories, which are just energy, each macro, carbs, fat, protein are made up of a certain amount of calories, right? So tracking calories is one thing. Tracking macros can be even better because we both know what we just talked about earlier in this show is most people undereat protein. It's really hard to eat enough protein for the people that are in the gym wanting to look like they work out. You're probably under eating protein, or especially if you're just in this modern day and age going out to eat a couple times a week, you're probably just under eating protein for what your goals are, because that's just how things are served at restaurants. We're typically heavy on the chips and the fries and like 4-ounce, protein portions. Like
cheaper stuff.
It's cheaper. It's just how the world works. Like it just is what it is. And actually it truly is like an unfortunate circumstance of like how our food is today. Like it just sucks. But in maintenance, what you can do, not just by focusing on fat loss and weight gain and muscle gain and all the things, you can actually improve your body composition and maintenance as well. And this is a really cool thing because we don't have to worry so much about, am I losing weight? Am I gaining weight? Like eating more or less than we're like quote unquote comfortable with. If you're cool with just learning the basics of macros and spending 2 to 4 weeks of like getting a rope of like how much you're consuming, what you're eating in your diet, and then fine tuning what those macros are within that calorie. So you're eating 2,000 calories, but it's 300 grams of carbs and you're eating 30 grams of protein. Just by swapping that and like bumping up your protein, getting to that 150 protein, learning where your carbs actually should be on a day-to-day basis, you can see really positive changes in your body composition as a result of eating more protein and as a result of performing better in the gym because your macros are better rather than just calories, right? Each macro has its own like role that it plays in our body and our body composition, and of course how we work out, right? We need carbs for like faster energy. Protein is what rebuilds our muscles. So understanding like basically what your macro profile should be and getting that to a place where it's a little bit more optimized, that's what can happen in maintenance. More than just like, yeah, you're finding out where your maintenance calories are, yada, yada. But it's like you're also practicing and getting used to building meals around those new macros and where they should be. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maintenance is like so critical. And so another thing that I like to do, and I don't typically do it, by the way, for 2 to 4 weeks, it's something that I typically like clients to be consistent with for 2 to 3 months at least, depending on where people are coming from. Now, I've worked with people that have undereaten for years. Those people need to be in maintenance for a year plus. Seriously. If someone's been eating 12, 13, 1,400 calories for a long time, they're having a really hard time getting their calories up. They're not going to just eat more overnight. Like it's a psychological thing. Like it's a habitual thing. It's an appetite thing. Like it takes a while to like get your body to readapt to like where it needs to be, like people undereat. The same thing with like people that overeat, right? Like there's extremes on both sides, but these things we all want because we've been marketed to happen in 30 days or 6 weeks. Like these things do take time, and like I'll never beat around that bush. And that's what people kind of struggle with the most. And that was the hardest thing about nutrition coaching is it's like, I'll get you results, but like you have to put in the time. Like, I'm sorry, like I cannot give you anything in 6 weeks. Like it just won't do it.
Yeah. I mean, I always thought that it was when I would get people to do maintenance was I would just tell them, hey, don't change anything for now. I just want you to track everything you're eating. Let's kind of see what you do on a normal basis.
Yes.
And then they would come back with these like crazy low numbers. It's just because when they just start tracking and when they start, doing anything, putting effort into it, they start changing their habits like tremendously. Even though you tell them not to, like, I just want to see what you normally do. They would all of a sudden they're eating all this different stuff. And it's like more, there's more volume to their food. They are eating more protein. They're eating better. So it's like, I couldn't get a really good picture of exactly what you were doing before this, which is what I was like kind of curious about when I did it. And like, granted, I wasn't like a super experienced nutrition coach when I was working with people. I just wanted to kind of see where they were at currently, but they would always like kind of just do something totally different all of a sudden when you get them on, when you start working with a coach. I think people change.
I think actually people can go one of two ways, and I don't know what the split is, but like, yes, there is something to be said about like what doesn't get tracked doesn't get managed. So like it's just like anything else. If you were writing out your food diary for your doctor appointment or whatever, like you're gonna try and behave. Or yes, I do floss and brush my teeth or whatever. Right. At the dentist, there's those people, and again, that's where tracking sometimes just like a byproduct that isn't have anything to do with your calories or your macro breakdown. It's just I'm paying more attention to it and tracking it. So instead of picking out that random candy dish that I don't really feel like tracking or know how to track, I'm just not going to do it. Like that shit happens all the time for sure. But then there's the other people, and these are the people like that. And there's studies on this. I know BioLane's talked about this. People totally underestimate what they're consuming. Like it's just, we love to blame everything besides the fact that we're putting too much food in our mouth. And once you start tracking and actually weighing your food, this is what people do. Like they say that they've tracked also, but they've never owned a food scale. And it's like, have you ever measured your cereal? Like, have you ever weighed it? Because like, fuck off if you think you're eating a 200 calorie bowl of cereal, because this is 200 calories of cereal. You know what I mean? Have you ever weighed peanut butter? Have you ever weighed ice cream? Like, these are depressing things, guys. And again, this is coming from a place of like, I've seen it all, but like, we feel like we're eating so little. There's some awesome people that make great content on this. Like you'll just see like visually, you know, a chocolate bar, a handful of nuts. It's like the smallest little like quantity looking of food visually. And then you see these leafy greens, rice, vegetables, a big hunk of chicken. And then you do like the calorie comparison. Obviously this huge plate or bowl of food is like 200 calories. And then it's like this chocolate situation full of calorie dense junk food is like 1,000 calories. I'm being extreme for people that, but it's like, I'm sure people have seen these graphics. This is where tracking and being honest with yourself and weighing and all of the work, this takes time. Like this is why, again, maintenance is just, you're learning all of this during your maintenance phase. Why would you set yourself up for being a little bit hungry and the things that are a little bit harder when it comes to like dieting and cutting or even gaining too, because some people struggle to eat more, same thing. When you can't even eat in your maintenance and like learn how to track your food consistently, track all of it, weigh all of it consistently. It's work. Like it is work. So this is why set yourself up for success, start in your maintenance phase and learn where your calories really are. Because like people think that I swear I eat 1,200 calories a day. And it's like, well, no, Linda, you don't. Like you're 45, 55, 65 pounds overweight. Like you're not getting there from eating 1,200 calories a day. Yeah, that might actually, I want to talk about this. That might actually happen. There's the people too that eat 1,200 calories a day, but then what happens the next day? It's a weekend or a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They had 16 beers over the weekend. They had a whole pizza. They ate a whole bowl of ice cream. Okay, well, weekends, my favorite thing, like weekends, 40% of your week. 3 days out of 7 is 40%, 38% or something like that. It's a lot. Okay. It's a good chunk of your weekend or of your week. And so, yeah, I've also coached plenty of 1,200 calorie Janes that are eating their rabbit food during the week. And then they gorge themselves over the weekend and they're wondering why they're also not seeing progress. Well, your body doesn't just like reset every 24 hours. Like it's a continuum. So really the way you should be looking at it is like, what is your weekly calorie goal or your every 2-week calorie goal? That's like kind of how it works. It's over a long period of time. And so, yeah, will one day fuck you up? No, but like, again, 100 calories over 4 weeks, you know, that's 4 times 7, 28 days, 100 calories a day, 2,800 calories, right? We see how like those small little tweaky changes start to add up over time. That's macros. Those are the phases. That's why we track. That's why I love to do macro coaching.
Yeah, I mean, I just had experience with putting my food on a scale that I normally wouldn't. It's just like the skinny pop popcorn.
Oh yeah, you just did this like last weekend.
Because on the front it says, 1 cup, 47 calories. I'm like, okay, well, I'm at 2,500 calories a day. Like, if I have a cup, this is really no big deal for me. And I just dumped some in a bowl and then I weighed it. I was like, oh my God, that's like 5 servings.
Yeah, that's wild.
And I was like, this is a normal sized bowl of popcorn.
And popcorn's not even like, it's not like the ice cream or the peanut butter offender. You know what I mean? Like
right.
Weighing those is like way worse, but it's like, it can sneak up on you.
Yeah, I was like, that's an extra 200 calories that I could have consumed every day if I would have just, because it was a giant Costco sized bag of popcorn.
Yes.
And by the end of the week, that would have been 1,400 calories. And that would have, taken me out of my deficit.
Yes. Yeah. And so this is like so important. This is what coaching is. Like, this is the meat and the potatoes of it. No pun intended, but like getting people to come up against themselves and be honest with themselves. Because also, listen, like, dude, this is awesome. If you are crushing 22, 23, 2,400 calories, you're a 5'3", active woman. That's a fucking great thing if you're maintaining on that like to be able to go from a diet. I want to see my women eating really well, all of my clients just eating at a good maintenance level too, because then when we are going into a diet phase and we are cutting calories, it's a lot fucking easier to diet after you've been maintaining on 2,300 calories than it is if you're maintaining on 17.
Right.
That's it. Like, that's the move. And so to answer her question a little bit more about like, how do we know where we need to go? Everyone must start in maintenance. No questions asked. Maintenance also changes throughout your life. We've all had where we take on a new job and we're sitting more than we ever did.
And throughout the year.
Yes, totally.
Like wintertime, you're not moving. And then we're talking to
Yes.
golfers. Like,
Literally.
obviously, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, like, if you wake up, go to your office, sit in a chair all day, go back home, sit down, watch TV, eat dinner, lay in bed,
Yes.
go to sleep, versus a day where you're getting up, going to the driving range, playing a few holes. I'm not even talking about playing 36 holes on the weekend. I'm talking about if that big of a difference, it'll be a pretty substantial difference, not like crazy difference, but from sitting on your ass all day in the wintertime because it's cold, maybe working out once, maybe working out 3 times a week, versus like working out plus now multiple times a week, going, hitting some balls, getting up, moving around, just putting, like
Yes.
just those, it's not neat because you're actually like planning to go do this activity, but yeah.
It's the extra activity, extra exercise throughout your day. Totally. Seasonal, life changes, new kid, pregnant, not pregnant, yes, it's, weather related. So and I'm saying this because if you're the person that's like, well, I tracked my calories a couple years ago or, 6 months ago and I was here for one day. No, start over. Where's your maintenance? Right here, right now. If you weigh more than you did the last time you did it, you're probably burning more calories because you weigh more. If you weigh less, you're weighing less. Like if you've already been through a diet phase, you lost 20 pounds, your maintenance calories are going to be less than when you were 20 pounds heavier. Like there's all of the things. Find the maintenance. That is where you start. Once you are comfortable there, and I'm talking like you've spent a couple months there or you've done the work, again, this is where nuance, right? This is where the person that might have been dieting for way too long might need to spend a lot of extra time in maintenance. Like a good rule of thumb is like, if you've been under eating for 2 years, you should probably spend 2 years, like that same amount of time in maintenance, like kind of like getting your metabolism back up to like where it needs to be, like to regulate to where it needs to be. But I won't get into that because we're not speaking to like a person, but maintenance is so important so that you kind of know where you want to go next. Mm-hmm. Now, if you are the undereater who has been undereating for a really long time, sometimes in maintenance, I know this isn't really like, this is going against the definition, but like we can see a little bit of weight gain in maintenance. It's typically like a little bit in the beginning and then it tapers off, but it's like, your body is like you're putting more food in your body. So you're going to see the scale go up. You're going to see more water retention as a result of eating more carbohydrate. Like it's typically like a little bit artificial. And then again, you might just gain a little bit of weight from eating like more food that your body actually needs. And what we're really trying to do again is like get your metabolism to adapt back up. So we hear metabolism is broken, like all that kind of stupid shit all the time. But like your body is just super amazing at homeostasis. Like the human body is insane. And so it's always wanting to like be able to maintain where it's at, and like it will adapt to what you give it. Like it wants to survive. It's like procreate, survival. Like those are the 2 things that your body's always trying to do. So if you've been like living off of your 1,500 calorie diet for a really long time, like it's going to adapt to that. It doesn't mean that your metabolism's broken. It's working exactly how it's supposed to. But that does mean that like it's going to take a little bit of work to like get it back up to where it needs to be. So if you're wanting to get up to like eating 2,000, 2,200, 2,400 calories, like a good, healthy, athletic human being. And again, I'm speaking very generally when I'm giving these calorie targets. It's going to take a little bit of time to get there. We do a thing called like a reverse diet to slowly like bump up your calories and get you to where you need to be. But I forget where I was going with this, but I guess just expect like in those cases, like there might be a little bit of weight gain, but it's to set yourself up for success and to build your foundation so that you have a successful like fat loss phase down the line.
Right.
Okay. So
I think what was the next question about how to determine where you're at with golf and with the program?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is kind of where you can get into all of the nuance about what program is like, or what type of program or style of program is going to be like the perfect program for like what phase that you're in. But a good workout program is going to be good for any phase.
It doesn't matter.
So yes, largely like, no, it doesn't matter. Our programs are well balanced. We do recovery, we do full body, push pull, upper lower, like it's all of the things. Progressive overload is a huge component of our programming. But if you're in a fat loss phase, if you're in a gain phase, you can be doing any of our program during any season,
right,
in my opinion. And I would think that you would agree with that.
Oh yeah.
One of the things that's important for people that are both wanting to gain muscle and lose body fat is to maintain their muscle mass. So if you're lifting weights and you're doing resistance training, you will have that success. You're sending that signal to your body. No matter what, if you're trying to lose fat, if you're trying to gain muscle, the goal should be to maintain the muscle that you have no matter what. And if you're definitely if you're trying to gain muscle, but we should be strength training 2-3 times a week, which all of our programs provide. Now, sure, like let's humor the person that's going to be like, well, are there more optimal times to gain weight and lose weight? Sure, we probably all know these times of year. Summertime's a little easier to lose. Wintertime during the holidays, usually a little bit better of a time to gain, like generally speaking, right? So I lean more towards like seasons. And so does our programming in terms of like when we're doing a lot more heavier, maybe super strong, heavy lifting, lower rep strength training workouts. It's happening in the wintertime. That said, no, was that not right? You don't typically do more like of your...
I've been giving options now.
That's true. That's true. Like,
I gave an option if they want to work on more hypertrophy to build muscle, or if they want to just keep focusing on strength. Typically, I do a little bit lower reps and sets in the summertime because I try to minimize fatigue when we're playing, and we do the longer... higher rep ranges in the wintertime.
Okay, sorry. Your eye like literally twitched so hardcore. He was like, "You're misspeaking on my programming."
Yes.
Okay, Cody's programming is awesome. But to answer this question, but I mean, really, this is why I'm the nutrition person, because at the end of the day, though, like it's nutrition driven, and I think that when I'm taking on a one-on-one client, which I took on throughout any time of the year, I always encourage people like throughout the holidays. I'm like, look, it's just not always the best time to like be going. We can do maintenance. We can learn how to track when we're traveling and doing the holiday party thing. Like we can try to like attempt to like fuck around with maintenance. But I'm like, this isn't usually a fat loss phase time unless this person is like, I've done this before. I just need some accountability. I'm hardcore. I've had like a couple of those people where I'm just like, this bitch is going to like diet over Christmas and she's going to crush it. Like that's cool. But like usually like just set yourself up for success with that and like roll into springtime, like doing your fat loss phase starting in March or April or whatever, or, January, February, like whatever, like post holiday is like typically the best. But if you're someone who's like traveling all summer long too, like plan around that more than like planning around your workout routine. I think that our workouts support any of these phases. So long as we're resistance training and like, that's what we want to be doing no matter what. That's a really important component to all of this, by the way. So like, I know we have, and she said this in her question of like, well, you said workouts don't burn a lot of calories, which I want to talk about that now. They don't. They do. We've all worked out and been like, oh, I'm hungry like later in the day. Like that's your body being anabolic and being like, yo, I'm building some muscle, I'm repairing this bitch. And it's awesome. Like I love that feeling where I'm like, I'm hungry, not necessarily because of a bunch of calorie burn. I think it's really your body is like responding to the stimulus that you gave it earlier that day. But where workouts actually are important from a body composition, gaining or losing perspective is more along the lines of the signal that you're sending your body than it is the calorie burn. Like, yeah, like if you're lifting weights and doing squats, like you're going to build some definition in your legs and your lower body and your butt. Like those are the things that you're telling your body to like build there. You know what I mean? So it's like, if you are telling your body to maintain muscle in a fat loss phase, that's a really good, important component, because what we're hearing a lot about with like these Mounjaros and Ozempic people is, and this is no shade to any of those medications, but those people aren't learning that if they're not eating and not working out and continuing to just kind of like live their normal life, they're going to look like a melted wax candle because they're not maintaining any of their muscle mass. And so you're not going to get that definition. Like you could be losing weight and starting to look worse for some people. Your body composition is changing for the worst. And that sucks. Like nobody wants that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I heard something like that people are possibly losing more muscle than fat on those things.
Oh yeah, you told me that recently. That's why.
I mean, obviously if you're obese, like you'd have to have, I mean, if you have a high amount of muscle and a high amount of fat, Like, I guess that could work, right?
Yeah,
But
I don't know.
it doesn't make sense, like, if someone was obese and, like, pretty non-muscular to, like, for that to happen.
People don't have a lot of muscle
But
because there's been research on that too.
There must have been this must have been like in more trained in, because I know like some bodybuilders and stuff are starting to take this stuff too to go through their cutting phases. But
oh, interesting. Yeah, well, that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like those medications are not. If you're gonna just suddenly stop eating, like think about if you've ever been really sick for a long time, or if you've been hospitalized, like God forbid, or broke a bone or something, and you were kind of down for the count. You get like that atrophy, and your appetite goes down. You kind of get like weak and small. Like
yeah,
fuck that. Like think about it like I like to think about it like this. You can look at two completely identical body weights. Like say this person weighed 100 pounds. Two people weighed 100 pounds. They're standing next to each other. One person has 20% body fat and the other person has 40% body fat, right? Like that person has 40 pounds of body fat on them. The other person has 20 pounds. Like those two people are going to look really different, even though they weigh the same, right? And so I think that's what we're seeing. We're not seeing like these doctors or there's not whoever's prescribing these medications like encourage people to like lift weights to like actually, where else is your body going to get the signal to like build and have maintain muscle? Like what people need to understand is muscle is really expensive tissue for your body to have. Like it expends a lot of calories. And again, as our bodies are needing to survive, like that is literally what our bodies were meant to do. And we came from thousands and thousands and thousands of years of not having any food, like having to fucking hunt and shit and like rummage off the land. Our body is going to conserve energy. And so it's going to literally pare down muscle. It's going to be like, fuck you. This is expensive to hold on to. Like I'm getting rid of this bitch. Like and that's what happens. Like that's literally what happens in our body. And that's why like building a good physique like takes work and it takes intention. And so the workouts themselves, they absolutely do matter. Working out and training is a component of having a good looking physique, but it's not coming from a place from the calorie perspective. And the best way to explain this is it's like it is so much easier to not eat 100 calories than it is to go work it off. Right. Work it off. Like it's so much easier to just say no to the Reese cup and go run like literally 3 fucking miles or something just to like burn that off or whatever it is, right? Like that's ridiculous. And so that is where the nutrition piece like is important in that perspective. And just to touch on her like Tamagotchi watch comment, because this is something that like I've recently gotten a new watch. My Garmin, my last one was 9 years old. God bless her soul. She's still running, but I like really was just like missing out on like any good data points because it was just an old piece of equipment. And I have this new one and it's hilarious. Like the things, I mean, sometimes like I'll do a strength workout and I've been like fucking around with just playing with like how, I really like it for heart rate. That's one thing that I truly do use it for. But then it gives you like the little calorie burn at the end. And I'm like, okay, like I'm a 135 pound woman. Like I didn't just burn 500 calories lifting weights for like 45 minutes. You know what I mean? Like on like a not high intense like situation. It's just so most of these things overestimate them a lot. Definitely at exercise equipment. You definitely like that's not personalized at all to you. Like those things are way not estimating things correctly at all. But when in the context of someone learning their macros and understanding like, oh, should I be eating that back? Or I burn, 1,800 calories today. That's what my watch said. Like the best way to know what your maintenance calories are is to track your food. I don't care how many times I say it during this podcast. There are all the calculators and the AI robots in the world, but like people are really individual. Your diet history matters. Your body composition matters. Your age, your sex, your weight, your activity level matters. It is so impossible to put in a calculator like your exact steps per day and what your diet history was like and how much food, like I typically tend to eat a little bit higher calorie than like some women. And I think it's just because like I'm generally pretty lean and I haven't done like a ton of dieting. But again, if you come from a place of like to have done a lot of crash diets, like your maintenance calories might just be like a little bit less than the next person, right? And I've seen that time and time again, like especially, men and women, honestly. But it's like if this person has gone on like the yo-yo thing, like their maintenance is going to be a little bit different than maybe someone who's always like had a pretty healthy appetite and not done a lot of dieting or whatever. So I say all this because like these calculators and these watches, as like cool as they are, they're not it. The best way for you to find out what your maintenance calories are is to track consistently for 2 weeks and take the average of those 2 weeks. And if you're really scattered in all over the place, give yourself a full month for the people that are like 1,200, then 2,200, then 3,000. Like track your calories. That's the amount of food that you maintain on, is like understanding what your calorie intake is. It's the best way to like find out what it truly is.
And step on the scale, because then you'll know.
And step on the scale regularly. That's another really important thing that I touch on in the ebook. It's like, I know how crazy and obsessive this can sound to the person that's never tracked before, and how it can sound to be like, weigh yourself every day. I understand, like, for the people that might be like, there's people that are very triggered by those like behaviors. And honestly, there are people that tracking is not for them. Completely understand that for people too. Like, I've also turned away people, and we'll have the discussion of like disordered eating patterns and things like that, where it's just like, I get it. Like, this might not be like the best approach for you. I find it to be the best way to educate people on what they're consuming, to teach the people about how big their bowl of popcorn is and like what's in it. And then weighing yourself, like being able to do that, and I've seen people overcome hurdles with that too, where they're just like able to shift from being subjective to objective about it. And it takes time, but it's like, once you see like the scale goes up and down all the fucking time, you like stress out about it so much less, so long as you're consistent with doing it like the same time of day and like the same, what I say, like environment. So like wear the same outfit or lack thereof, do it after you go to the bathroom in the morning, like before a meal or whatever, and just be consistent about the time that you're doing it. And then you can see those trends over time. And it's a lot like the stock market. There's going to be like lots of little all over the place.
Right.
But the trend over time is really like what you're after and what you're wanting to look at.
Yeah, because I feel like people can look at, just one point in time and then the next one that could be weeks apart.
Always.
And you could either be thrilled or you could be really disappointed.
Yes.
Like if you weigh yourself today and you're 100 pounds, obviously just pick an easy number, and then you weigh yourself again in 3 weeks and you're like 96 pounds, you're like, cool, I lost 4 pounds. But you could weigh yourself that very next day and you'd be back to 100 and be like, okay,
right.
I've done nothing well.
Right,
but
nothing's happening. What's going on?
But if you've, because you could have went to the Mexican place last night,
yes.
and ate a bunch of chips and salsa, and now you're holding on to all this food and water weight, and so.
Yes.
Like I use an app called Happy Scale, and
Good app.
And it literally, it'll show you your trend for the week and your running average and stuff like
yes.
that, and you can see that go down like 0.1 of a pound every day, or,
yes.
or maybe not.
Yes.
I try to like go at a little slower. Sometimes I'm successful and sometimes I'm not, but I want it to be like a slow little trend down where like maybe
yes.
it's a half a pound a week if I'm cutting or something like that. And yeah, you can look at the chart or you can look at your numbers you've logged in there, and it could literally be like I could have went from 100 to like 98 pounds, 96. Pretty consistently, and then one day it's just a big spike. And if you just weigh yourself on that particular day that you had that spike for whatever reason, it could be you might be pretty disappointed.
Yes.
Or there's days where you have super low days, and maybe you hit that day and you're like, oh, I'm crushing it, but you just had a super low day for some reason. And I think that kind of came up too when you see these guys that on the PJ Tour, Will Zalatoris and Daniel Berger, where they're like, oh, they gained 12 pounds of muscle in 3 months. I'm like, I really think that they're confusing pounds of muscle, which total pounds. And then I feel like they probably weighed one day. They're taking their lowest day they weighed in over those 12 weeks
yes,
or 3
100%.
months, and they're picking the highest day.
I agree with that.
And the difference could be 12 pounds. And people are like, oh, well, this still doesn't sound right. I'm like, well, yeah, 12 pounds of pure muscle doesn't sound right, and it's probably not. But that's probably what happened, is they're just taking the low day and the high day and not looking at the averages in between, is my theory.
We haven't talked about this out loud, but I'm impressed with your observation, because I 100% agree with that. We both kind of shook our head when they were saying that on the
and
TV,
12 seems to be the number they're throwing out there.
Were the exact
this guy
same.
12 pounds, you get 12 pounds, you get 12 pounds of muscle, it's like, let's calm down.
Putting on 12 pounds of muscle in a couple months for a golfer, like bodybuilders out there are like, bro, like this is not a thing. Like, it's just, I don't want to get into that, but because I do want to talk about pace, because I think she kind of alluded to that a little bit here, and I want to talk about that because that's really important here. But where were we at? Where were we finishing up with? Oh, just calories on the watch and the weighing yourself. Yeah, so
do it the old-fashioned way. Scale.
Yeah, weighing yourself,
weigh your food, weigh yourself,
and weighing your food consistently. And it takes longer than you're gonna think that it's gonna take you, but if you do it, it's worth it, because then you're just have like, I've seen so many people have the like whoosh, like mind-blowing moments. The one thing I want to say too for women, I say 2 weeks a lot. Really, like, girls, you have a 30-day cycle, and like a month is, to be honest, like where I like to get people to like track and be consistent, because like our body weight does fluctuate like a lot more than men does throughout the month. And so that can be really discouraging as a female, and it can make us think, oh, we're not making any progress, but like it's just kind of par for the course, unfortunately. Like, it's just how the body works. And so I see a little bit more linear-ishness with men than I do women, who, during ovulation, we might spike a little bit. During the week before your period, you might spike a little bit. So this is where I like to say, like, girls, measure your day 1 against your day 31. Like, those are like good points to look at. So looking at that first week and then that 5th week, like kind of seeing those trends versus like week over week for some women, honestly.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that, I think that when people hear nutrition, that the number one thing they think of is body composition.
Yeah.
And, and to a point where people, they think that tracking is obsessive. I'm like, what's really great is tracking, and your performance is insanely better.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And being obsessed with like a really good performance is what we all are after. And to just track and weigh your food is like a minor inconvenience of like your true obsession, which is getting better.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. I think we like to say things take up time and are inconvenient, which there are circumstances, right? Where like if you're cooking for your family, like how do you like divvy out your own like portions? But like it's just more people are resistant, I think, to change, because I've also seen plenty of people, plenty of busy moms, plenty of all of the things where after a couple weeks of like kind of just getting into the habit, it truly is effortless for that person. So I like feel like the roadblock can come from a place of like, I don't have the time, but I'm like, man, you have the time to go through the drive-through or stand in line for whatever X at lunch for 30 minutes. You have time to actually portion out your food before you head out the door for 5 minutes. And like, it's actually less time than like the going out, the waiting in line, the ordering DoorDash, the $40 extra that you spend in a day on meals out or whatever it is. Right. Like, so I just feel like, and it's different, but depending on the person, but the roadblock is more, I think, just the change and the having to kind of pause and do things a little bit differently. But I get that. Yeah. Like that's definitely, I agree. I think, another way to look at it too is money saved. I think it actually ultimately ends up saving you time. But I also just think like, hey, like if you're not budgeting your money, like how are you handling that in your own personal life too? It's literally the same thing. And the reason we have to track macros, unfortunately, these days is because we do have access to a lot of food options. Like it's, people can be, well, we didn't have to do this. I want to do intuitive eating and like all this. It's like, what is intuitive eating if you haven't tracked macros though? Right. Like, how do you know where's your intuit? We can't use that. Like our food is processed. It's hyper palatable. We eat food that doesn't fill us up. Like, so that's why macros and tracking it kind of exists now, so that we can kind of like understand like we're not just picking meat and veggies anymore. Like we're eating all kinds of foods. And that's the positive of macro tracking. What I really like about it is people can still eat their fun foods. Like they can eat the treats that they want to eat instead of doing the extreme diets that cut out food groups, which we haven't talked about that in this episode. But really a lot of those diets are calorie restriction diets. It's all like that stuff is. If you're fasting, you're eating less, supposedly. If you're taking a, no carb diet, you're eating less because you're not eating carbs. So it's like, why not learn the macro part of it and learn the calories and the macros? Because then you can build in your M&Ms or your brownies or your ice cream, like into instead of having to say, no, I'm never eating that ever again. It's actually a fuck ton more flexible than all that other stuff.
Well, I used to work in the restaurant business for a long time. And you know what they're doing back there? I worked at a good one. Not all of them are like this,
yeah.
but the good ones are like this. Everything that's on the line, the line being where they're prepping your food, there's all these things that they put into each plate or whatever that you order. Each one has its own scale of some sort. It's usually just a spoon of like, okay, you get 1 spoonful of this, you get a spoonful of that, you get 8 ounces. And in the back, they are slicing up meat and portioning it out. Not just because they're trying to save money, but it's also that's what the recipe is. And that's how it tastes good.
Yes.
So if you want to take it from that point too, it's like, when you're making something, you don't just put a shit ton of one thing in it and this and that, like some people do, but like usually put a little bit of each one in there. And you can also, I find that I've made myself like really good recipes that I like when I'm putting like a certain amount of each food in there. So you can look at it that way too, instead of like, oh, I'm doing this super restrictive thing. It's like, no, I'm just making a recipe because it tastes good if I put 4 ounces of turkey in it. It tastes good if I put 2 eggs. I don't need 12 ounces of turkey. It tastes good with 4.
Yes.
So that's another way I look at it, is like restaurants do it. It's not that big a deal.
Not a big deal at all. It really is just kind of like following a recipe for your whole day. It's really all it is. So yeah. So let's make sure we answered all of her questions, because I think there was a little bit more at the end. How do you figure out and adjust for each phase? What are reasonable expectations of each? Reasonable expectations of each. This is where I kind of wanted to like, okay. So I'm not going to go into tons about like, how do you know going into each phase? I typically, like what I said earlier, maintenance is where you should be spending the majority of your time. That's where it's at. I don't like to really do longer than like 12 to 16 weeks of other phases. I think that people kind of tucker out. So if you have a long way to go in one way or another, like whether you're trying to lose a lot of body fat or gain a ton of muscle, it's always good to go back to maintenance in between phases, because it's like you've been through both types of phases. You get totally burnt out of dieting when you're like, oh, fucking starting to get hungry. My performance in the gym starting to suck. My sex drive sucks. My sleep sucks. Like things fucking suck. You know how you know when you're done your phase? Your biofeedback starts to suck. Like things just start to suck. Usually 12 to 16 weeks is a solid amount of time, just kind of depending on where you're at. Same thing with bulking. Like after a while, you're like, I'm fucking done with eating all the time. I'm like full. My digestion is just like blah.
I start getting slow.
Yeah, you're just like, this sucks. Like I feel heavy, like not in a good way. I'm just full and bloated. 12 to 16 weeks, then go into your maintenance for, another 6 to 8 to 12 weeks, or even longer, right? Like this is where kind of has to depend on what's your travel schedule looking like, what's coming up for you, like what's your training going to be like, are you going to be able to be consistent? This is where people mess up though, and this is what I want to talk about next. Dieting tends to be the easy part, right? This is why people can tend to have like that quick success for 4 to 6 to 8, even 3 months, or they do something good for a few months. Then what happens? Well, I'm done tracking, so I'm just going to be in maintenance, but maintenance means I'm not going to track anymore. And so I go off the rails. And so I gain all the weight that I lost back, or I lose the weight that I gained back, or my performance in the gym starting to suck again because I'm not paying attention to my macros. Guys, this is the bread and butter. This is what consistency is. This is the people that you're picturing that you want to look like with their body, that your goal body looks like. They are being consistent 99% of the year. I'm sorry, that is the truth. They are doing the things. Now, do you get to a place where you have to track your macros for forever? No, I think you can graduate from that. Like, I think we're examples of that. Or like, after you do it for 5+ years, you can intuitively eat. You know what your body needs. You know what you eat day in and day out. Our meals tend to stay like really much the same. There is a light at the end of the tunnel from a macro tracking perspective. Like, you don't have to track for forever. And I wouldn't even say 5 years you have to track for to like graduate, but like you do have to do it for a while, and through the events and through the holidays and through the vacations, to really start to feel comfortable with like what your like maintenance calories look like. And again, I think it's important. Like, one thing that's cool about macros is like, once you learn it, it's a tool in your toolbox that you can always go back to. You can always like, oh, I need to track for a couple weeks and like see where I'm at. Like something feels off with my training, or like I've been training really hard. I think I need to like up my macros or up my protein. You start to get to that place where like you can adjust and like know what you need on the fly. But the bread and the butter, like all of these diets and all of the things that we've seen marketed to us, and all of the things, they all work for a certain amount of time until they don't. So that's where people like get in trouble, and they will make this little bit of progress, and then they go back to their old eating habits. And I think the hard pill to swallow for a lot of people is you do have to keep kind of doing this, like eating the same forever if you want to keep the results. If you don't, and like you're just trying to like look snatched for a few months out of every year, like that's cool. Like I literally respect that too. But if your goal is to like, look shredded all of the time, but you're not willing to like be consistent with like doing that work all of the time, then like you can't expect those results. Like those things don't line up. Does that kind of make sense? What I'm saying?
Sure. And for me, it still just comes back to performance. Like once you kind of break it, and you break a cycle of eating, because a lot of people eat shit, like eat highly processed food. Like that's what it is. People eat tons of that stuff.
Well, it tastes good.
It tastes really good, and every diet now, that you can eat some crazy delicious keto stuff, you can eat some crazy delicious highly processed vegan stuff. So I mean, what doesn't matter. But once you break yourself of that cycle, and then you kind of go back, like if I don't eat a bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch for like 6 months, right? And then I can eat it and I won't sleep well that night. I wake up almost like feeling kind of hungover. So I think once you really kind of, what tracking your macros will do, it encourages you to eat, to make better options, or to make better choices, excuse me. And then once you've made those choices for a long time, then you go back to kind of making your old bad choices. And if you've kind of become more in tune with your body and how you feel and your performance and stuff like that, you're like, wow, what did I do yesterday that was different? Oh, I had a bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and now today I feel like shit.
Yes.
And if you're someone that's truly, wanting to do really well in the gym, it makes a huge difference if you can feel good every single day.
Yes.
Or most days.
Yes.
I mean, we're humans. Like, you're going to feel off for whatever reason. And then if you're a golfer, it's really nice to go to the golf course full of energy.
Yes.
And not feel like shit and not be, and then you notice like people always give me a hard time when I go play golf, like I pack my food and tons of people stop, they get beers, they get their hot dogs. If I had a beer and a hot dog at the turn, I would feel like absolute shit playing that last 9 holes.
Yes.
Absolutely. I'd feel terrible. And I think that's what really keeps me on track more than anything, is because I know what it feels like to feel really good. And then I also know what it feels like to feel really bad. And that's the motivation that will keep you going.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that really is it. What gets people into the gym or into like starting to work on their nutrition typically is not like, I want to feel good. Like maybe they'll say it, but it's like typically it's a little bit more vain, which is fine. Like I want to look better. I want to lose body fat, or I want to gain a bunch of muscle and like look like The Rock or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's usually like what gets people like in the door. But yes, after you do this for a while and start to correlate your macros with how you're feeling, and when you're making better food choices with how you're performing, that is what I always tell people, that's what keeps you in the game longer. That makes, because listen, we all want to eat the piece of cake. Like I literally always want to eat the piece of cake or the cookie or like whatever the fuck, like of course. But like literally the thing that like, it's so hard. Like our willpower can only do so much because these foods are made so yummy that we want them so bad. It's so hard, almost impossible, seriously, to like say no to like certain foods or have the one chip or whatever without like eating more. Mm-hmm. But the thing that can help intercept that is like the thought of, oh my God, in an hour, I'm going to feel like literal hot garbage. Mm-hmm. Same thing for like with drinking. People maybe can associate that better of like, or they can't, but this is what I work with people on too, is like, okay, but like you can think about how fun the beer is now, but like, how will it feel later, or when it makes you want to have 3, 4, or 5, or tomorrow when you're hungover? Like it's the same idea. And like, that is then what keeps you, man, I don't want to work out today. Like I really don't fucking want to work out, but why do you do it? Because it makes you feel fucking good after every single time. Like I regret that workout, said no one ever. Like that starts to become like your food situation too. Mm-hmm. So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because like that is so true. And then it makes it so much fucking easier to like just stay on your path, because like you're like, well, my goals are X, Y, and Z, and I don't want to feel like trash. And I have 10 hours of work that I want to crush tomorrow. So I'm going to like not do.
I think most people will never be truly happy with how they look. Sorry to say that, but it's true. Because I think we talked about this in past episodes. Like what we perceive as like the perfect physique is almost completely unattainable for most people. So you're always going to try to want more. But what's going to keep you really motivated and happy is your performance. And we're talking to golfers here mainly. So if you can go to the golf course and if you can get up and practice and have energy and feel really good every time you go do that, that is the biggest part of nutrition for me.
Yeah, 100%.
Because I hate feeling like shit. I mean, yeah, like you said, like, why do people not get trashed every night? Because they would be hungover the next day. If hangovers didn't exist, and that's why there's so many companies trying to come up with these hangover, remedies, right? Like, not to my knowledge, like none of them actually work. But the person the company that figures it out, they're going to be very, very rich, right? Because that's the only thing that holds people back from drinking. And once you really get yourself dialed in with food almost becomes the same way. I mean, I can eat certain foods and I will sleep terribly. I will have I'll have like some GI issues. And I'm not even talking about like going nuts. Like I might just have like a piece of pizza or something like that.
You have a really sensitive
I have a sensitive stomach. Well, I've developed an even more sensitive stomach because my body you throw a wrench in the system all of a sudden when I eat some piece of garbage. I don't sleep well. Like, even my client that comes here at 5:45 in the morning, he can like even tell. And, it's not because I'm hungover. It's because I just didn't sleep well because I had maybe we went out and I got something that I normally don't get. I do it to myself more often than I'm willing to admit on this podcast. Yes. But
you do.
I'm not perfect, but I'm just saying like that's what keeps me from doing it all the time.
Yes. And so that's just something to kind of like look forward to, I think, because like for what I want to wrap this podcast up with, because I think we've like totally unpacked this beyond. But
yeah, you're welcome, Jen.
Yeah, I mean, expectations are so important, right? Our level of happiness is like the gap between like expectations and reality, right? And so like if you can level set yourself, like if your expectations are way up here and like this is the work that you're doing, like you're gonna have all this like, but I want. It's like level your expectations, get yourself like meet yourself where you're at as far as what you're really trying to attain, what your body type is to like what your structure is like all of these things like that go into play. But again, like, yeah, if you've got a family and you're comparing yourself to what you looked like when you were 18, these are the things that like we need to unpack, like whether working with a therapist or a coach. And like, those are the outside of the macro space things that we need to work on. But, yeah, but again, there's also a lot of progress that people can absolutely make. And like nutrition is a big component of that. And I think we've been sold to that things can happen overnight or in a couple of months, and that's just not the reality. We need to be going through all of these phases in our nutrition throughout the year and cycle through them and not expect things to change in 6 weeks. Getting an understanding of your maintenance, going through a bulk phase to actually give your body a chance to build muscle and increase your metabolism and be okay with gaining 5 to 10 to 15 pounds maybe. Like, I know that's scary for someone who wants to even lose body fat, but these are reality things that have to happen so that in the long run, you're setting yourself up for success, that you can build your metabolism up to be healthy. You can fit in the piece of cake and it doesn't just go onto your body and you gain 10 pounds the second that you eat it because you're so under eating all the time. You actually have like food flexibility and metabolism that is healthy and thriving, and you've built the muscle that makes your metabolism thrive more, and you're giving yourself like all of these things that in the long run, your body will thank you for it and your metabolism will thank you for it, and you'll continue to maintain the progress that you've worked hard for because you're doing it the long and slow way and not the quick and fast way that's just going to be taken away in 2 days, 2 days, 2 weeks.
Right.
So hopefully this was helpful. Our ebook is online for those that are interested in it, liftheavyswingfast.com. Yeah, I think that's it.
I think we crushed it today.
Okay, well, thanks for the question, as always, and we will catch you guys next time.
Thanks.